Now, in order to understand that, it gets easier if you have had a computer science degree. But again, it's absolutely a no-no if I say that, you cannot understand all of that if you do not have a computer science degree. Basically, what you're doing there is you're trying to understand the various building blocks of the system. You're trying to understand how the data is flowing. What is the architecture like? And that is something you can absolutely learn on the job. You would also hear terms like system design. That's what is system design. That how is my system essentially connected? How is my system designed overall? And that is where, a computer science degree comes into play. That being said, again, just reiterating that a computer science degree is not at all mandatory to become a PM. You're well and good, even if you do not have a computer science degree, as long as you have the hunger and aptitude to, learn and understand the systems, essentially, it's going to be perfectly all right for you. So yeah, just wanted to address that elephant in the room, and good luck to all of you, who do not have a computer science degree, as well as who have a computer science degree, but not necessarily an experience in developing software applications. Now, let's come to the, identifying the why of the product. Now, why I wanted to talk about this was, and it also comes from a lot of personal experience that I've had by far, which is many times you're going to, come across features, or you're going to have ideas, because, when you're working on a product day in and day out, you get extremely passionate about it, and you do feel like, taking it from 10x to 1000x. Now, when we do that, we come across a lot of ideas which we want to implement right away, and we want to see the impact that it creates, the buzz that it creates, the level to which it takes our product. But then it's very easy to get carried away in the flow. But at the same time, being a responsible PM, you should understand that, is it even needed? And that's why I wanted to address the why of the product. And when I say why of the product, herein I wanted to focus at a broader level. That is the product itself. It can even be at a feature level, at everything that you're doing in a day-to-day as a PM. Now, you should be asking yourself certain key questions, key guidelining questions, essentially, which will help you understand that, should I be going this path? And just calling it out that, these may not be the exhaustive set of questions that you should be asking yourself, but these are going to be certain extremely helpful guidelining questions, which can possibly, help you answer to yourself and to your stakeholders that whether you should be going ahead with this path. Now, firstly, is there even a need for the product? And just reiterating, you read on the screen that it's product, but you can even think about it as a feature. Like, is there a need for the feature? When I say that, what I want to do is, I want to understand that, are there even any existing problems or pain points that I believe can be solved with this? Like, for example, somebody needs to go from point A to point B. Now, do I need to build a car that flies? No, I can build a car with, a high speed, essentially, which can, and here I'm not referring to the Bangalore traffic example, because there certainly we can talk about it that, we can have a car that can fly essentially all the way through the traffic. But jokes aside, what I want to say is, are there any existing problems that, the customers are facing or the users are facing, which can be solved with this product that I have in mind? Like, let's say, are my users wanting to order food online, like, or do they have other ways wherein, they can call up the restaurant and they can order in food? But no, right? Because, for example, in case of the famous food delivery apps that we have, they thought that, if a restaurant is 4 kilometers far from my place, I cannot just call up all the time the restaurant and, like, get the food delivered to my place. It may not be possible. And therefore, there was an existing problem, or there was a pain point that needed to be solved. Now, the next point being, are there any alternatives that can be leveraged to meet the need? When I say that, What I mean is the example that I was just taking about the food delivery app. Now, do I have the existing alternatives wherein, I can call up a restaurant 4 kilometers far from me and get food delivered? No, right? It cannot happen with all the restaurants. It might be possible in case of one or two restaurants, but it may not be possible in all cases. And that's where, I can see that there is a need for a better solution, for a better product, for a better feature that I want to build. And the third thing, wherein I want to focus on the outcomes of building this product. Now, this is wherein I'm also referring to the. I did not want to quote any jargons over here, and that's why I avoided that term. But just to talk it out, the cost benefit analysis. Like if I'm spending, let's say, my 100 development days in building this product, what is the outcome that I'm achieving out of this product? Like, is that significant enough? And if that's not significant enough, it's if that's not solving a big problem for my users, for my customers, then I would not possibly take up that particular assignment or take up that assignment of building that product or that feature. So your outcome has to be significant enough to meet the need at hand, and also it has to meet the costs that you've implemented in building the product. And if you have answers to these three questions, you can have that assessment in your mind that there is a need for this product. Now, the next part is whether you should be building the product. Now, why did I want to focus on this as well? Because there can be 100 problems out there in the market. There can be 1,000 million problems out there in the market, but you're not solving for everything. For example, a food delivery app may not tomorrow, start an EV machine directly, right? EV vehicle directly. Now, that's where in the alignment between the two comes into play. And that is why it also connects to the why of the product. Like, do I need to build it? Like, why me building the product? And the first thing that you need to focus over there is, does this align with my business strategy? Like, where do I want to go? What do I want to offer to the market? Like, does this align with that strategy? What do I want to achieve? And then comes your organization goals, your strengths, your challenges, your opportunities. For example, I might be, making the best pickles. Let's say it's a homegrown business, and me and my mother might be selling, cooking the best sort of pickles. But am I ready to cater or progress this pickle through an e-commerce platform and send it across the globe? Let's say at this point in time, I'm not ready to do that because I do not have the resources, I do not have the strengths, I do not have all of the backing that I need for that. And then I might face certain challenges which I may not be, challenges such as logistics challenges, storage challenges, and all of that, operational challenges, which I may not be ready to face right now. And then the opportunity side of things, like is this a good opportunity for me? Is this a opportunity that I want to progress ahead with? Those are the things that I need to focus on. And then the alignment with your user segments. Like, and here I wanted to clearly call out that I'm not saying that, if I have a certain category of, let's say, 100 users, I'm only going to think that, whether my product or my feature aligns with those set of users. It may not be, right? I might be ambitious and might want to cater to a new user segment with the product and features that I'm building. And therefore, why I wanted to focus on this aspect as well is, what are the user segments that I cater to or that I want to cater to? Only if it aligns with, only if the product or the feature aligns with those user segments, am I going to be building the product or the feature. Right. And I would also request Tamsha to just stop me anywhere if, like there's some issue or All right. Now that, we've identified the whys of the product, like whether I should be building it or does it align with everything that I do. And let's say I have zeroed in on, yes, I should be building it. Answers to all my questions in the previous slide were yes, and along with any other analysis that you might have done. Now is the time that I'm going to think about building my product roadmap. But before, I build a product roadmap for this forum, I want to be completely aligned with what do I even mean by a product roadmap? Like, what do we see? What is this product roadmap as such? Now, product roadmap, what it does is it helps you visually represent all your plans. Firstly, it ties together your strategy, the why, then the work that you'll need to do to achieve your goals, and then a timeline for completion. There's a when. Now, firstly, the why, which we've been talking about, and then the work that I'll be needing to do. For example, let's say you need to build a particular e-commerce platform. To talk about a very, very simple platform and, very, very simple tasks that you might, that a user might carry out on an e-commerce platform is, log into a platform, search for products, go through the catalog, add it to the cart, complete the payment, and then receive the delivery updates and everything. Now, this might be a very, very simple one. So if you want to build an e-commerce platform, you would have these sort of building blocks to achieve that final goal of having an e-commerce platform live. And therefore, these are the works that you need to do. Now, in a proper formal context, you might even refer to as, the chart. You might refer to these steps as your charter or your objectives or your key milestones, whatever the terminology can be. But this is essentially the work that you need to do to achieve your goal of building the e-commerce platform. And the last part of it, which is the timeline part of it. Now, when you have this entire roadmap that, okay, I need to, do this to achieve my goal of finally having my product built completely end to end, I'm going to build up this much in the first quarter, this much in the second, and so on. And then, whatever, like you might have plans for, even what you're going to do next year or after that. And this again is completely subjective to the organization that you work in. I have worked in various organizations wherein, in one, they used to have a 6-month roadmap. In another, they used to have a quarterly roadmap. Another one, they used to have a yearly visualization of what they're going to build in an entire year. So that is completely subjective to the organization that you're working in. And again, it's, that's why you would read even different definitions on the internet if you, search the word roadmap as such. Now, having talked about what essentially are going to be the building blocks of a roadmap, to summarize, what it does is it links your goals to the detailed work and shows the time frame for achievement. But the last part here, which is very important when you're out working as a product manager and actually like in a real world scenario, you would always have to have your resources and your capacity in mind. When I say that resources and capacity, let's say you're a small organization, or like, or let's say you're a bootstrap organization. Now, you cannot, unless, you are somebody, among the world's richest people, you may not have, just 100 crores to push into your business. Or you may not, if you're a bootstrap organization, you may not have, 1,000 people just coming and all of a sudden working on your product. So all those are the kind of resource constraints that you're going to keep in your mind, that, okay, this is the strength of my development team. This is the strength of my testing team. This is how much, I can spend on this product or this feature. And then the capacity, basically, which again also ties with the manpower as well as the number of days that you have to build the product as such, or to ship the product to the market. So as a product manager, whenever you're preparing your roadmap, this comes into play as a very, very important building block, wherein you have to consider that what are your resources and your capacity, and you have to align all your everything, all your plans that you're having in your roadmap with these resources and capacity. And therefore, to summarize, a roadmap is essentially a high level plan which shows you how you'll accomplish your goals, and it helps you picture the work that you need to do to achieve your goals, along with the schedule in which you're going to do all that work. So I believe that makes clear to us that what essentially is a product roadmap. Having said that, now let's say you conceptualized your strategy, you understood that, okay, yes, I need to build this product. You have a certain set of features that you need to put in your product roadmap. And trust me, I say this with my experience, that usually all us PMs, like as enthusiastic PMs, you would all have every quarter or every 6 months, whenever, like whatever is the timeline of your respective organization's roadmap planning, you would always have, let's say, 20-25 features easily on top of your mind that you want to build for your product. Like it happens with me, it happens with a lot of PMs, because as product builders, we want to achieve everything. Like we want the product to do everything possible. But then you cannot do that, right? And that's wherein your prioritization of your objectives comes in. Like, what is it that you want to prioritize, put in the roadmap to achieve the goal? Therefore, the first aspect which comes into play is review and evaluate potential features. Now, these potential features would be, let's say, your users' pain points, basically, which you can find out through user interviews, or, if it's a new product, for example, you can do a lot of market research, or you can do user interviews. You can see what, essentially is playing out in the industry with your competitors. There are certain organizations which do not focus on competitor analysis. There are certain ones which do focus on competitor analysis. And that's again, like I'm referring to it as, a lot of big techs, a lot of startups. But I believe in my personal capacity that it's always good to understand where the industry is moving. What is it that, everyone out there is doing? It's always, I'm not saying that, you as a product manager should copy what others are doing. No, that should not be the case. But you should always be well informed about, where is the market moving? What is it that my users are preferring? Because at the end of the day, you're building your product for your users, not for your company, not for yourself. You're building it for the users to solve their pain points. And if there is a product out there in the market which is solving their pain points and the users are preferring that, so it gets very, very important for you as a PM to know about that competitive product from a learning perspective, that, what is it good that, that particular product is doing, and why not just learn from them. Like I'm not when I'm doing a competitor analysis, I'm not doing it from the perspective of copying the other product, but I want to get inspired, or I want to learn from that particular product. Having said that, coming back to the point, so you need to understand your user pain points. Now, if it's a new product, like I was saying, you might do a lot of market research, you might do a lot of user interviews. If it's an existing product, well-functioning one, these things are going to still hold value over there, which is, your market research, your competitor analysis, your user interviews, but alongside what your product analytics say. When I say product analytics, to again come back to, the way I approach this presentation is come back to what your metrics say, that, how many users have been using my product, which features are being used the most in my product, how much time is the user taking. If, that's again very, very subjective, but just calling out certain metrics that, that are usually laid out when, we are assessing a particular product. And these are very, very subjective to whichever product you're building. And the next aspect can be, what are your feedbacks, if at all, that my users are giving. And it's very, very important for us as PMs to always have visibility on what feedback are my users giving me. Having said that, the next area from where you would get your potential features is your request from stakeholders. When I say stakeholders, it can be in general your business stakeholders, your operations team. When I say operations team, it might be, for example, your customer services team, who are day in and day out, speaking to the customers and solving their issues, taking their feedbacks, all of that. And then depending on the organization, there can be a bunch of other areas as well from where you can get the feedback from where you can get these requests from stakeholders. For example, in some of the organizations, even the pre-sales people, or the sales team essentially are going to, and this is more so common in B2B organizations, wherein when these salespeople or the sales team essentially, or the pre-sales team, are going to present to the potential customers or the existing customers the products, the customers then and there say that, okay, like, why not this and this, or why not that and that, and how does this happen, do you have this thing? And that's wherein that also becomes an important source for us as PMs to get feedback about the product and see how the market is perceiving our product. The next can be business priorities. Now, when I say business priorities, what I mean to say is my business at this kind of a level wherein I just want to, grow, and I want to have more and more users using my product. I do not care if I'm monetizing all of those users. I do not care if, how long are they staying on my platform. I just need to get more users onboarded to my platform. That can be one of the business priorities. Then there can be another one wherein, let's say, my product is sort of in a matured state, and I now want to focus on monetization of my product, and how can I make more and more revenues, or increase my existing revenues from my product. So that can be, again, the kind of business priorities that you can have: growth, monetization, activation, all that sorts. The last kind of area from where essentially you can get these requirements or potential features is the one wherein it can be either operational or regulatory commitments. Now, what do I essentially mean out of these terms? Operational can be, your product is out there in the market, it's running well and good, but there are certain aspects in the product which are broken. Like, for example, my users are not being able to add products to the wish list. The wish list feature is broken. There's some bug because of some deployment that had happened in the recent past. Now that sort of becomes an operational feature. Something is broken. The next thing can be, the regulatory part of it. For example, I cannot have my saved cards still saved in my, I cannot have my previously used cards saved in my checkout page. I need to manually save all of them, and only then can I, use those cards after a certain date. So these are the kind of, operational or regulatory commitments that you might have in your product. And having received requests across all of these areas, what you're going to do is you're going to review and evaluate the potential features that you're going to put in your roadmap. Now, in any organization, at least the ones that I have worked by far in, and most of the organizations out there, this is not a one person's call that, which feature is going to go into the roadmap. It's again very, very subjective to the way an organization operates. But usually what happens is you would be gathering for various roadmap review meetings with stakeholders across the board. When I say stakeholders across the board, to call out some examples over there, it might be, it would be you from the product management team. It might be, some representation from the business side of the people, the business stakeholders who are going to fund the product. Then there might be some people from the operational side. There might be some people from the customer services team, or rather, I covered it in the operational side. There might be some people from the risk side or the regulatory side, and that's wherein, and it is again subjective to the organizations that you're in. You're all going to gather and review all the potential features, and eventually then assess the features that are there and put some of those in the roadmap. Now, how do you do that in that particular meeting? Like, it's not something that, it's not something based on hierarchy that, somebody senior is saying something, just because of that, I'll put a feature in the roadmap, or some feature looks very, like fancy and I'll put that. It's not like that. You do have a certain criteria for the prioritization of those objectives. Some of these might, come or go, depend on the kind of organization it is, but broadly, the ways in which you prioritize the objectives that are going to go into your roadmap, or, the objectives that you're going to go after to solve for your users, is firstly, what are the top pain points for my users? Like, which is the particular feature, if I implement that, or which is an issue that, if I solve that, that is going to make my users' life easier. In any organization, in any industry that you'll work for, the customer pain points are going to be the key thing that, you as a product manager would need to focus on, or would want to focus on. The second aspect, which might be there, may not be there, why I say that, is the revenue part. Not all features earn you revenue directly. Some features might be earning you revenue indirectly. Some features may not earn you revenue at all. But then you would still want to focus on those features, because in a way, those features make your platform or make your product a complete product. It might be, helping the user complete a certain thing, or it might be adding some some wow factor to your product as such. So it may or may not always be directly related to revenue, but yes, it might be. The third thing is your timeline aspect. Now, you might, have 100 ideas, but if all of those 100 ideas are going to take you 100 years to build, you cannot take that into your roadmap, and you cannot prioritize that. Possibly, your stakeholders might be wanting a certain thing within a certain time limit. Now, if you cannot deliver that within a time limit, either, you're going to lose business, you're going to lose users. And when I say you're going to lose business, in that particular time frame, when you could not build the product, a competitor might come up with it and build and ship it out there in the market. You might lose users because, again, your competitor or some other company, or there can be an alternate solution that might come into the market, which might eat your users, or your users might just drop off from the platform if they continuously go on to see a certain problem occurring in your platform. Now, all of that can also lead to user churn, and therefore, you need to be very, very cautious when you're putting objectives in your roadmap regarding the timeline that it's going to take you to build those features. And the last thing, which is the technical feasibility aspect. Now, this is something which, which actually is not the last thing in this list, but I would say, it's something which is always going to be there, when you're putting things into your list of the objectives in your roadmap. Now, what I mean by this technical feasibility is you might discuss the potential features that you have in your mind with your engineering team, your software architects. And if they say that, this is just not feasible at all, considering the systems that you have, considering the capacity that you have, then it's not going to possibly, the feature is not going to see the light of the day, and therefore you cannot put that into your roadmap. And finally, what you do over here is in this entire exercise of identification and prioritization of objectives, you're going to finally organize those into releases to have your plan complete. Having said that, moving on to the key result areas. Many times, many PMs, including me, when I used to, when I had begun my product management journey, and I still, feel that it's my day one in this world, basically, because there's just so much to learn over here. And it's just, personally, it's just such an interesting domain for me. What happens is, very many times we get carried away with a certain idea, but we forget to think about, what are the results it is going to, have for me. And that is why initially when I was, defining the whys, I had, the goals as well covered in that why list. Basically, what are the outcomes that I'm going to, achieve out of building a certain product. This is basically the outcome part. Now, when I say that, you as a product manager, you might come up with 100 features, but how are you going to debate it that, whether this particular thing is going to be successful? Or let's say tomorrow, when a certain feature has executed, how are you going to present the success of that particular feature? You cannot say that, I spoke to some users and they said that it's a great product, or I, heard it somewhere that, the product has turned out to be great. That does not qualify as results that you've obtained. It's similar to, how possibly, we used to see in our childhood that, we used to have those report cards, basically. So this is the report card of a particular feature. I'm not saying this is the report card of a product manager, because that's completely different. But this is a report card of a feature that you built. Now, there are also certain levels in which you can, measure a particular feature's success. And how are you going to essentially measure this? Now, let's say you have an e-commerce platform, or you have a food delivery app. Now you have a checkout page in your food delivery app, or on your e-commerce platform, wherein you implemented a certain new feature. For example, you implemented a one-tap checkout button, wherein what happens is, if the user just taps it once, the money gets deducted from the user's wallet directly, given that there is money in the user's wallet. Just hypothetically thinking of the feature. Now, what you want to do is, you want to increase the adoption of one-tap checkout by 10% in the next 6 months. Now, you see how, I have kept it very, very specific in terms of, I want to, this should be my result, that it should increase by 10%. But then you would also need to, firstly, if this is your result area that you're going to focus in, how are you going to, push data to it? Like, what is it that is going to help you understand whether this actually happened, like whether you achieved this result? Those are going to be your metrics. And especially, in a lot of B2C organizations, you would be tracking these product metrics on a daily basis. Even when I was in, one of the B2C organizations that I worked in, like, I remember tracking these metrics on a weekly basis and sending out the report to the who's who of the company, and, including the top management of the company. So, for example, one of the metrics can be, percentage of shoppers who completed payment through the one-tap checkout button. Now, if there are a certain, if, let's say, on your platform where you on your food delivery app, basically, where you implemented this one-tap checkout, let's say you have 100 users coming onto your platform. And for example, let's say out of those 100 users, 60 users are basically completing their payment through the one-tap checkout option. And let's say it's seeing an increasing trend, like this percentage is continuously increasing in the next 6 months. Then how is it increasing? What is the average increase rate that you've seen? And let's say if that is around 10%, or in the best case scenario, if it's even more than 10%, then you have achieved your results. And this is very, very important in order to showcase not just to yourself, nor but to your stakeholders across the board, that the feature that you've built has actually been successful and has actually been able to derive the outcomes that it had actually been conceptualized to derive. So that's essentially what I meant through the key result areas of your product, wherein you're going to see whether I achieve the results and the outcomes. So I just wanted to call out the references that I like. One reference essentially that I referred to for enriching this PPT further, and that brings me to the end of the PowerPoint presentation. And yeah, open to any questions that all of you have.
Thank you so much, Preeti. That session was wonderful and it was a learning experience. And I hope that it was a learning experience for everyone as well. Can I get quickly in the chat if this session was an enlightening experience for you when you got to know a lot of information and knowledge from Preeti? So first of all, thank you so much for that, Preeti. And I would be taking this session till the very end, right? My co-host has had some problems, so she had to leave. So I'm here. Now, I would want all of you to ask your questions in the Q&A box. Don't write them in the chat, because in the chat they might get missed. So please put them in the Q&A box. And meanwhile, I'll have some word with Preeti, because I had some observations as well during the session, and I would love to have your take on them, right? So during the part where I could understand that when building a roadmap or when building a product feature, anything, the common misconception is that some people are fixated on the output rather than the outcome, right? As you said in the end, when we were measuring the key result areas, that the goal is to increase one tap payment by 10% in 6 months. Now, how do we achieve that? That is not of concern. You can give a walkthrough video of how to do a one tap payment, or you could just highlight the button, right? So that is what I want to ask you, that how important it is to get fixated on outputs and to get fixated on outcomes, because there are situations where the stakeholders, for say external or internal stakeholders, are more inclined towards the output rather than the outcome. So how do you deal with that situation being a product manager?
Sure. And that's actually a very, very interesting question, because I, as a product manager, do face that part wherein, my stakeholders are completely focused on, this is the outcome that I want. This is like they are more so inclined towards the business side of the things that, I want to increase the market share, I want to increase the revenue. And that's wherein, my creativity as a product manager comes into play, wherein I can show them, let's say, these are the potential 4 solutions which you can implement in the product, or wherein in the user flow, basically, to possibly achieve these outcomes. Now, out of those 4 solutions, it's again, we as product managers are not selling the product directly, but also selling the product in some ways, wherein I'm selling those features that if I implement this first feature, this is possibly going to help you achieve the outcome as well as make life easy for my customers. And the second feature, let's say, for example, it's going to help you achieve the outcome, make the life easy of my customers, and also is going to be easy on my development team's efforts needed. So those are some of the possible ways in which you can position a certain feature to your stakeholders, and then sell the particular feature. Again, when I say sell, I am selling it based on possible facts on which I can sell it, and not just any random theory as such. So yeah, that's how I deal with it. Like, I come up with proper objectives in which that's saleable.
Understood. Yes. And now we have been getting multiple questions in the Q&A box. So we'll do the entire question and answers for the next 10 minutes. I hope that's okay with you, Priti.
Yes.
Right? And then we'll end the session. So one common question that that's being repeated again and again and again is that how is your experience at Microsoft as a PM? They all want to know, how did you get into Microsoft? What is your experience? What is your day-to-day life? What are the activities that you do in a day-to-day basis? So if you would be willing to share that, it would be really great.
Sure. So I love, and I just hope this is very helpful for all of you, that I'm going to start right from the application stage. So many times, many of you might be, reaching out to people on LinkedIn for referrals and all. A lot, like just like all of you, I also did that. But I would not say that that's the only way in which you can get a shortlist at Microsoft. What I also did was I went to the career section. I shortlisted the roles that I was interested in, and then I applied for those, and that's from where I got the call actually. And then I had a bunch of interviews. Usually, you would have sort of 5 interviews, wherein majorly they will focus on the kind of work that you've done by far, and then they would give you a lot of case studies. So whenever actually anybody asks me, any product aspirant, that what do I need to prepare for these product management interviews, so I would say that practice a lot of case studies. And when I say practice a lot of case studies, I don't want the aspirants to just think about the solutions for a particular product problem. No, many of these companies actually look at the approach that you have, the structured approach that you have. So please, whoever practices this, just implement that proper approach. So coming back to my journey, application, then I got the initial call, and then a bunch of interviews were set up where they asked me about my experiences by far. They post case studies to me, and then eventually there's also going to be a last round, which is sort of a team fit check sort of a round, wherein they just want to see that how are you as a person, how would you be with the team, whether you align with the team that you're being hired for. So they're going to check that, and once you clear all of that, then the good news is on your way, that you'll the offer will be rolled out to you. And now coming to, after getting into Microsoft, now there is the one thing that's challenging being in Microsoft is the system is huge. Like, there are just so many different teams doing so many things that it's both a boon and a bane. Like, boon basically that you're going to learn so much, and bane because you need to understand everything, that how the entire big engine is basically functioning. So that is one aspect of it. So when you join Microsoft, you're going to be exposed to multiple different teams, different stakeholders, and you're going to understand that how are they contributing possibly to the work area that you have been hired for. And as far as your day-to-day activities are concerned, it's going to be, you would have sort of, catch-ups with your business stakeholders, wherein they would share your requirements. You would have a lot of catch-ups with your engineering team, where, you're going to work with them hand in hand to make a concept into a reality. And eventually, you're also going to, as a product manager, you should always, track the success of the metrics part of the things. Basically, how is your product functioning? And yeah, that I believe summarizes a usual day to day. Alongside, there would be a lot of planning meetings, there would be strategy meetings, there would be a lot of learning areas as well. So Microsoft does this very well, that it exposes you to a bunch of learning sessions wherein you can learn anything and everything, right from the usual cultural stuff to leadership to communication and everything. So yeah, that's what a usual day is like.
Yes, that sounds really interesting, Preeti. And I'm sure all of you are now clear of how all of you can land your next product manager job at Microsoft, right? So get ready with your application and start preparing for the 5 round of interviews, right? Now, moving forward, there's this question, and I've personally tackled this question multiple times during my sessions with the students. The question is that when you work with different companies, right? So let's assume for your example, it could be, let's say Paytm is a digital company, right? Its focus is it's basically fintech, and Microsoft is a software industry, right? So when you shift this entire tangent, when you shift from one role to another, and the industry changes, does product management change with that as well? Or when you move from B2C to B2B or any shift in your role or industry, does product management change with that as well? Because for me, if I have to talk about my experience, then I feel that the overlay can change, but the base will always remain the same, that you have to make the life of your users easier, whether they are business employees or whether they are direct consumers. So that's my perspective, and that is what I tell everyone. But I would love to know your perspective on that as well.
Yeah, and I pretty much actually agree with your perspective because that's also something that I have experienced.
Hmm.
Your base roles and responsibilities of gathering requirements, defining it, explaining it to the engineering team, and then getting into the development life cycle, finally shipping the product. That part is going to remain the same. What
Mhm.
changes is in case of a, let's say, a Paytm, which is like sort of B2C company, wherein users are giving you feedbacks continuously, like one thing breaks and there's users can put it on social media and stuff. So on a day-to-day basis there might be a lot more agility in terms of the features or the priorities being taken up. But even in that case, even in Paytm's case, we used to have a roadmap defined and we used to work with that. Even in case of a Microsoft, which is a big tech or an established organization, there also we have a roadmap defined and we work based on that roadmap. But yes, if certain things are for example, in case of a Paytm, the user might go to Twitter and tweet about it or whatever and complain on the like it's out there for the world to see. But in case of a Microsoft, let's say the user is going to come to me or drop me an email or things like that, and then we're going to work it out. I'm going to give the user a particular timeline by which I'm going to resolve that issue. So that's how it's different, but overall it's going to remain absolutely same.
Understood. Perfect. So I hope everyone is clear with all the questions, and we are just at time. So Preeti, if you would have like to say some parting words to the audience, and then we can wrap up the session. So thank you so much again, Preeti. It was wonderful having you, and it was wonderful listening to all your knowledge and wisdom. And I have surely gained a lot from your session today, and I hope the students have as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot for arranging things. And it actually makes me nostalgic because I have been at the other side, learned from Insaid, learned from these kind of sessions from Insaid, and it's extremely humbling for me to just share whatever I've learned by far in my journey and just learn from this community as a whole. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to share all of this with you all over here.
Yes. So everyone's asking to connect with you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, for sure. Please right away, like you can send me connection requests and yep, I'm there.
Yes, perfect. So thank you so much, Preeti, once again. And we'll wrap up the session, everyone. So if you have your 11 a.m. class, it will start around 11:30. So you can join that, you can relate it. Sabyasachi, just give me a second. I'll share the LinkedIn link and we'll wrap up this session. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. It was wonderful having you, Priti, and looking forward to some future sessions with you as well. Right.
Likewise here. Thank you so much. Bye bye. Take care. Thanks everyone.
Bye. Take care. Bye. Take care, everyone. Bye.